So, any other Doctor Who fans rewatched Midnight recently at all? Oh, just me then. Oh, good enough. Hey, welcome to Acting is Reacting with me, JSB. Now, as threatened in a recent post here, for once, and indeed for the pretty much first time, I'm not prattling on about music, but instead am switching gears to prattle on about my other obsession, and the reason I'm an actly type person in the first place, Doctor Who. Yeah, I'm not original at all, am I? No. Anyway, we are 3 episodes into the latest series, widely rumoured to be the final one for some time, though of course we shall see. Time will tell, it always does, as a wise doctor once said. But if so, seems to be going out in style. So here are some thoughts from me on episodes 1 to 3 of series or season, whatever you want to call it. Season 2, series 15, 41. You're going with the 2025 series. Now, obviously, there's some spoilers for the episodes involved in the forthcoming review that's about to start in any second from now. So if you haven't, for some reason, watched the episodes yet, do that and then come back and find out what I thought of them, and then you can tell me what you thought of them, and it'll all be lovely. Okay. So we kick off with the season opener, the Robot Revolution. And for the most part, this is the usual relatively light-hearted season opener, doubling up as a new companion introduction piece. They're never going to rank among the greatest episodes, but when done well, they hold their own, and for the most part, that's what we get here. Now, we don't learn much about the Doctor's interest in Belinda, who is, of course, the new companion, but she comes across as a real person pretty much instantly, especially once we see her in the hospital setting and soon after at home, wherever that is. Even if she's possibly a bit too perfect, especially at her job. But hey, it's nice to have a nurse companion where her role is celebrated rather than there to be a bit of a joke. You know what I'm talking about. Before we get to Belinda proper, the robots of the title are cute enough, nothing we haven't seen before, but solid design, and the kids will like them, apart from the fact that they're a bit trigger happy and early on kill a cat, which is probably marking them out as being the most evil beings in the universe since the Master did this. Yeah, the Master killed a man as well, but that's fine. But the dog. Anyway, robots aside, it has to be said that the supporting cast here are pretty nondescript for the most part. The Doctor gets upset about Sasha's death after knowing her for 6 months, and the fact that he's been there that long is one of the things that gets glossed over a bit, but we barely meet her, and her death really holds little impact other than making the Doctor look of a knob as he stops for a wee cry in the middle of an ongoing battle and Belinda has to drag him away. Now, I don't actually mind the Doctor crying a lot, that's fine. But he can usually, hold it in and keep it together until such time as it's okay to have an emotional release. But here he just looks like he's going to fall apart 10 minutes into the first episode. Now, the rebels who he's ingrained himself with are fairly pathetic, all told. Though I would have liked to see a lot more of Manny, not because he's a great character, but because, well, hey, I'm allowed to be shallow at times. Don't do it often, but only human. Being New Who, there's a season arc, and it's all about Belinda and a bit of a mystery of what's happening with her and on Earth in 2025. So early on, we of course get our first glimpse of Mrs. Flood for the season, doing her best fast show impression.
You ain't seen me, right?
Well, quite. I do have a few quibbles with this episode. Nothing that kills it, but there's always some sort of level of suspension of disbelief in Doctor Who, but occasionally it goes just that far to let them off the hook entirely. So I can take all the time fracture stuff as an explanation of how the planet Miss Belinda Chandra has a long history well past the 17 Earth years of its naming. Oh, but hang on. It was a star that was named Miss Belinda Chandra, not a planet. Does RTD know the difference? Based on his comments in Unleashed, it doesn't seem like it, but I can gloss over that. Harder to gloss over is the extremely important plot point that the robots are faulty and can't hear every ninth word that is said. But seemingly only in the two scenes where that's really important, and the rest of the time, yeah, who knows what they're hearing? I mean, this is one where it just doesn't stand up to any level of scrutiny. I mean, does polish count towards the 9 each time, or the words the robots say themselves? Exactly. You need someone with the genius of Douglas Adams, basically, to really make a concept like this not only work, but make every single line count. Now, I did consider going through the whole thing to work out exactly what the robots hear in other scenes, but ultimately, to use the technical term, I couldn't be asked. Um, Maybe somebody out there has done that. I wouldn't be surprised. You know what fans are like. Oh, wait, that's the next episode. I'll come to that in a moment. Robots aside, we've got Alan. And look, I can buy Belinda being friends, even besties with a character like that, but to believe they were in an actual relationship, that's stretching credulity for me a bit. Plus, they don't seem to have entirely decided whether he should be a bit funny and awkward, I can relate to that, or a total creep. Overall, it's pretty hard to care about his fate, and even the Doctor just thinks it's hilarious when he gets polished up at the end. But that takes us into the final TARDIS scene with just the Doctor and Belinda, and this is probably the best scene of the entire episode. You get more pieces of the puzzle, and it really sets up their relationship. And it's refreshing to have her still not fully trust him after the events of the episode, and to call him out on his behaviour as he scans her without permission, using his sonic screwdriver willy-nilly, as always. Faults aside, then, it sets up Belinda's character very nicely, which is essentially what it's there to do. Overall, it's not in the same league as the similar episodes in RTD's first run, but it is a vast improvement on last year's opener, which I can't even bring myself to name. So, a 7 out of 10 for me. Good opener, but you'd hope even better episodes would follow. Will they? Well, that will bring me to Lux, episode 2. And Belinda's first trip through time takes her to 1952 Miami. But we get there first by virtue of one of the strongest cold opens in the show's recent history. Other than the strangely sparse crowd, the cinema setting is evocative and convincing, and makes a lovely change from all the green screen, impressive though it's been, that we've had in so many recent episodes. It's just great to have a good, proper, solid set for once. And along similar lines, the fake 1930s style cartoon introducing Mr. Ringading, an annoying kid's character who soon becomes very menacing indeed as he bursts out of the cinema screen into real life, and we go into the opening credits. So Belinda and the Doctor arrive 6 months later in the middle of the night, and the Doctor, of course, is unable to resist the mystery of the chained-up cinema. The 1952 setting is used very well here, with more nuanced handling than you might expect of the fact that our two leads are in a time that's potentially dangerous for people of their skin tones, not to put too mildly. Though as it turns out, the only outright racist character we see turns out not to be real, which is perhaps letting the other characters off the hook a bit too lightly. But I also appreciate that RTD wanted to acknowledge the issue without it being a dominant one in the story. So I think he probably got the balance about right, given his stated aims. Now, I'm always a little bit worried when Who goes to America because the accents are, to put it mildly, quite often very dodgy. But on this occasion, pretty solid. Nobody really lets the side down, and again, the supporting cast are far from being fully rounded, interesting characters, but they do the job. So this episode would live or die on the rendering of Mr. Ringading, or Lux, as he turns out to be, and he is a triumph on every level, from the animation to Alan Cummings' magnificent voice performance, and it proves there are still new things to be done with Who this far into its second life. Now, I was a little bit worried when I saw the thumbnail on iPlayer for this episode, because I feared we might be getting a mostly animated episode. But thankfully, the scene where the Doctor and Belinda are turned into 2D cartoon versions of themselves is pretty quick, instead morphing into that scene with the fake racist cop. and then the proper fourth wall break or smash as we meet the fans. Now, I'm sure some people will have hated that sequence. Hey, some people hate every sequence in Doctor Who. You can't do anything about that. But in an episode where meta moments abound, it fits right in, and it's definitely an affectionate take on fandom, not the sly dig that some have interpreted it as. At least that's my assessment. Now, the character calling out the obvious plot setup with the flammable reels and all that good stuff, well, I'm sure I've been just as scathing about the subtle introduction of hexachromite gas over 40 years ago.
Hexachromite gas, it's part of a sealing compound for undersea structures. It's lethal to marine and reptile life. I thought they would have banned it by now.
Progress doesn't.
Indeed. Now, again, the fan sequence doesn't outstay its welcome, and it is a delight to see the Fate characters realise they're real after all in the show's first ever mid-credit sequence. But before we get to that, we have a literally explosive climax and our first noble sacrifice of the season from cinema projectionist Mr. Pye, exposing Lux, the god of light, to too much light, which is maybe a bit silly, but the Doctor's line about us being 60% water but still able to drown is enough to make you go with it. And of course, we end with Mrs. Flood, speaking of water, warning us that the show's going to end on May the 24th. For good? Who knows? But in any case, a super strong episode and a 9 out of 10 for me. Can the season get any better than that? Well... Oh, no, sorry, the next episode's called The Well. I'm turning into my father there. Well, 3 holes on the ground is something he'd say, because he's hilarious. Hi, Dad. Yeah. Anyway, going to take us outside of Who for a brief moment, because I've been on YouTube for coming up to 18 months. And like many new YouTubers, have watched countless advice videos on how to do YouTube. One of the things people bang on about is consistency, though nobody consistently agrees what that actually means. But one interpretation is not giving your audience whiplash, i.e., changing up things too suddenly back to back and say, doing a short reaction to a naughty pop song in one video, then suddenly reviewing 3 episodes of a long-running sci-fi series for 20 minutes in your next one, and following that up with 2 prog bands going head-to-head against each other in a song war. Yes, that is basically my schedule for this week. Now, one of Doctor Who's greatest strengths to its fans is it can do all kinds of stories. For the casual viewer, following a couple of relatively light-hearted romps, getting thrust into this, well, I suppose that could be a turn-off. They don't know what they're getting or how to explain it or understand it. I hope they're not turned off, because what we've got here is one of the best episodes in recent, or indeed long-term memory, and it's also a rare sequel that provides a bit of extra depth and excitement to long-term viewers without, pun intended, alienating people who haven't seen, or after 17 years more likely simply haven't remembered, the original. In this case, of course, I'm talking about Midnight from Series 4, way back in 2008. Now, surprisingly, given that Midnight was one of RTD's self-penned classics from the early years of the revival, this sequel is the first to co-write of the new season. I'm not sure who did what, but Russell and Sharma Angel Wolfel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, should both be applauded for creating one of the most consistently tense and dramatic scenarios the show's ever seen. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of more light-hearted side of Doctor Who, and when it gets too serious, I sometimes find that a bit of a turn-off. But when something's done this well, oh dear, yes, another pun, sorry, it doesn't matter. The supporting cast here, particularly the troopers, could just be another bunch of faceless non-characters like the rebels in the season opener, but instead we actually get, well, as far as you can within the confines of a single relatively action-packed episode, a group of much better defined and contrasting characters who, crucially, feel like they know each other and have a real strong relationship embedded in the scenario before we meet them. But if Lux lived or died on the quality of Mr. Ringading, here we have a human guest character who the episode hangs around, and Rose Aileen Alice, as Alice, absolutely nails it. She's vulnerable but a bit cagey, so you can never fully trust her, and when the chaos is unleashed, in one of the most visceral sequences in recent Who history, everything feels earned. Now, apparently the episode had to be reworked once Rose, a deaf actor, had been cast, but was absolutely the right move and added further layers of depth to the episode as a whole. I think it would have been a fine episode with any version of the character in that position, but the character that we do get and the performance we do get is, one of those that takes something to another level. So well done to all concerned. The added mystery here of why nobody's heard of Earth or the human race allows the season arc to bubble away nicely in the background, as does the latest Mrs. Flood cameo, again one feeling a lot more serious, befitting of the overall episode. There's another tense ending with another self-sacrifice, but it doesn't play like a retread of the previous week's events. And of course we end with the sting in the tail that the entity is staying around, so to speak, after all. Or maybe there were two of them. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, great stuff, and a very rare 10 out of 10 from me. Now, as this was my first time talking Who, at least on this channel, certainly not in real life, as ever, I'm interested in your feedback. Hopefully I went into enough detail without going into too much detail. It's always a fine line to tread, but let me know your thoughts either way. And I'll most likely be back in a few weeks' time to discuss the next 3 episodes. And here's hoping they maintain the quality so far, especially of Lux and The Well. But either way, I'll let you know what I think. Meanwhile, feel free to let me know what you think of these episodes so far. So just please don't post any spoilers for ones yet to come. I like to go in as cold as possible, and obviously I gave my own spoiler warning about what this video would contain early on. So yes, this is my first but not last diversion into Who Matters on the channel, but if you're here for the first time because of that, and have any interest in music of the past 60 years, well, have a look around and you'll hopefully find something else worth checking out. So I will simply say thanks for visiting and watching today, and bye for now, but I hope for long.
Acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.